Hello and thanks for joining me. I'm out today on my KTM EXC 450 and I'm riding some green lanes in my native Northumbria. Today I'm just reflecting on why I sold my DRZ400 to buy this bike. I bought this KTM 4 years ago now and it's not a decision that I regret at all. That doesn't mean that I didn't like my DRZ400, in fact I love that bike, but I think it was a very wise decision to swap it for this KTM. So I want to talk a little bit about the DRZ, what I liked about it, and the reason why ultimately it didn't work out for me and I changed it for this KTM. First of all, I want to talk about all of the things which I really loved about the DRZ. First of all, it's a very reliable bike. I had my DRZ for around 4 years and I bought it second hand for only £1,500, and that included with 2 sets of wheels. So it was actually the Supermoto version that I bought with the Supermoto road wheels, but I also got with the bike a set of off-road wheels, which I then put knobbly tyres on, and I used to use the bike during the week for commuting into the city, and then at the weekends I would swap the wheels over and use the bike for green laning. I think the DRZ really lives up to its reputation as being an excellent dual sport machine, because it certainly made an excellent commuter bike for riding into the city during the weeks, and to be honest I probably didn't even need to put the road wheels on for that. It would have been fine on the off-road wheels and the off-road tyres. So the things that really stand out about the good points about the DRZ is that it was very low maintenance, certainly in comparison to the KTM that I'm riding right now. It just had, I can't remember exactly what the service intervals were, but they were typical road bike service intervals, which made it a great bike if you wanted to go off for longer distance, and I know they're very popular as TET bikes. That's to say for riding the Trans-European Trail. The bike was also extremely reliable. I had very few problems with the bike during the 4 years that I owned it, and I have to say probably the problems that I did have were just in relation to the age of the bike. It was quite old and relatively high mileage as well. So all in all, I found the DRZ to be a very good all-rounder bike, and I really enjoyed riding it. It was a great fun bike. But, and you knew this was coming, of course, the negatives. Why did I sell it? Well, the first thing is, it's still quite a heavy bike. They're about, I think, 150 kilograms, which in relation to my KTM is substantially more heavy. I really noticed the difference in weight and the impact that that had on my riding, which I'll talk about more in a moment, when I swapped the KTM. Also, and this is probably due to the fact that I was riding the Supermoto version rather than the E or the S version, the suspension was just not up to the off-road use. We have some pretty gnarly tracks around here in the north of England, in Northumbria where I live, and over in Cumbria in the Lake District, and you may have seen some of the other videos that I've made of riding, and you see how rocky and rough some of these tracks are, and the DRZ was really just not up to that kind of riding. Also, ultimately, I found that the DRZ, even though it was a fun machine for commuting, it just lacked the power of a road bike that I was used to with riding bigger bikes. And I started to get frustrated with it on the road, that it was running out of power, running out of top-end speed. And also, if I was riding it for quite long distances at high speed on roads, which I was doing quite often with commuting, then the vibrations at those high engine revs were really quite bad, and I was arriving at work with white finger. So I ended up actually trading the DRZ in for two separate bikes. I bought myself a KTM 950 Supermoto for commuting, and I found that was just as nippy through the traffic. The KTM 950 is about 180 kilograms, maybe 185, so it wasn't significantly heavier than the DRZ, but massively more powerful. And just a lot more fun to ride. You know, the brakes were so much better, the suspension was so much better, the handling, etc. on the road. So it was so much more fun as a road bike. And then for green laning on and off-road riding, I decided to get myself a KTM EXC 450. This KTM is definitely a more dedicated machine, and I only really use it for off-road riding or green laning. I don't do a lot of road miles on it, and I just keep knobbly tyres on the bike all the time. But the bike has seriously upped my game for off-road riding. It was like an instant jump in riding ability for me when I got on this KTM. Obviously it took me a few weeks to get used to it. The seat height is massively higher, it's got much more power than the DRZ, but once I got used to it, I am enjoying my green laning much more on the KTM than I did on the DRZ, and that ultimately is the issue for me. I'm now finding green laning really pleasurable, whereas sometimes I used to struggle on the DRZ on a lot of the rougher tracks that we were on. So I have nothing against the DRZ400. It was one of my favourite bikes. Of all the bikes I've owned over the last 40 odd years, it was one of my favourite bikes. And also I have to admit, I probably do nothing on my KTM that a better and more skilled rider than me couldn't do equally well on the DRZ. But ultimately, I'm just enjoying myself more on this bike. I feel it's more for me. I feel absolutely at home and comfortable on this bike. And that's the bottom line, really.